Hello there, how are you? I'm Bernard Featherman, and I'm the host of Business Today, and we have a most interesting, very interesting person here to talk to today, and many of you know him, Randy Seaver, and the company he's now with is Power Engineering, which is part of his older company. Well, Randy, what have you been doing with yourself?
Trying to stay out of trouble, but kind of the same old stuff. Professionally, Barton and Gingold was acquired by Power Engineers 2 years ago, but so I'm still doing the same things that I was doing before, working with the same people. We're just working out of a new office in Freeport and part of a much larger company with a much larger reach now.
Well, how many people they have there? 1,000 or up to 5,000 or
We're closing in on 2,000 employees.
2,000?
So we operate in 4 different countries, I believe in 16 different states across the country.
Well, they really have a super guy in you because you know Maine.
Right.
You were the editor of mainly newspapers
Yep.
for 7 years, if I remember correctly.
That's exactly right.
And
So most of my work is still here in Maine.
well, that's great.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about what you do so we can get a better idea of it.
Well, I'm a strategic communications consultant, and that's a lot of fancy words for talking about helping clients, whether it's a nonprofit client, whether it's a large for-profit client, what have you. If a client has plans or an objective they want to do, they need to figure out a way to engage the public or communicate with the public. And when you talk about strategic communications, it's two words: strategic and communications. So the communications part of it's pretty straightforward. You do a lot of listening, and you develop a plan for an approach. That's the strategy. The definition of strategy is just the development of tools and approaches in order to achieve an objective. So we help clients not only communicate, but communicate strategically to make sure that their message is the right message, to make sure they're hitting the audience that they need to hit, and to ultimately make sure that their project or their goal is successful. And that's what I help clients do.
Well, with your background, and it is terrific in social media, what exactly do you do there to show people that they can excel in social media?
Social media is a relatively new realm, and it has really exploded. It's changed the communications landscape substantially. When I left the newspaper business in 2006, social media was just finding its leg. There was no Twitter, there was no Facebook, there was, none of these things were really active, even though people were generally, getting more and more involved in computers. Social media has changed and has allowed people to become their own media, or allowed companies to control their messages or get their messages out to a very wide audience. So there's a lot of wonderful upsides to social media.
Give us an example of how you can take a company, a specific company, you can mention a certain field, on what they can do with social media.
Well, I won't talk about a specific client
I mean,
necessarily,
not a specific, but a specific
specifically
trade.
how they do that. So you're getting ready to build a large project in a specific community.
Right.
And what you can do by tailoring your social media, you can penetrate people in that community. You can get to people in that community via social media much more effectively than just, say, a newspaper ad. But it's not, you can't, the pitfall of social media is there are a lot of mistakes you can make with social media. And secondly, you can put too much stock in social media, because a lot of times, Bernard, what it comes down to, what we really think of ourselves in the consulting business is developing relationships. Because if you develop relationships with people in the public and you really listen to what their concerns are and you figure out how to address their concerns so that it's a win-win for everyone, then your project's going to ultimately be successful. You bring people into your project. You don't just kind of push information out at them.
Well, Randy, we've heard, and I've also written for the newspapers already, that a lot of social media sales are taking place. 30% of all the big boxes are selling through the media now, social media. and eventually it will probably eliminate some of their big box buildings.
Hmm.
How will that affect you when
Well,
you
it won't
present
affect
that?
us directly because we don't do a lot in the marketing or the retail sectors, but
Right.
there are huge landscape changes coming in how we purchase products or buy products or choose products. That's not really my realm, but that's going to. You're absolutely right. By the time my children are my age, I don't think you're going to see development of strip malls anymore.
That's true.
But in terms of now, newspapers are trying to figure out how to compete, how to keep up, how to have their own social media outlets. The Portland Press Herald, just at the beginning of this month, began charging for accessing its content. You can no longer access its content unlimited for free anymore. A lot of newspapers are doing this.
Right.
Uh, some newspapers have yet to do it. The Bangor Daily News is still free, but everybody's trying to figure out because a lot of people will tell you they're social media experts, but the rate of change happening in social media precludes the possibility of anybody being an expert because it's literally changing beneath your feet. Each
Right.
morning you wake up, it has grown, it has changed, it has reformatted, rebranded itself. So be wary of anyone who tells you or tries to sell you their services that they're a social media expert. There's some basic do's and don'ts in social media, and but for the most part, we haven't even begun to scratch the surface of how we're changing communications. We started with hieroglyphics and caves, and moved to printing press and things. These evolutionary changes and how we
The
communicate.
iPhone is a perfect
iPhone
example
is a
only
perfect
4 or 5
example,
years ago.
but when Alexander Graham Bell developed a phone, he had no idea what was going to happen with that phone over time. So we're on the cusp of another huge um, revolution in communications. It's exciting, but it should be terrifying at the same time. There needs to be some caution because you can get into trouble.
Well, with your background in newspaper work, communications is a very big thing today. And what you're doing is just an extension and going into something that is today, rather at the cutting edge, rather than what happened yesterday.
Hmm.
What do you think is going to happen with all these things that are going on now? When you go out to a customer and speak about communications or set up a strategy, how will they react?
They're reacting differently, and we're trying to. We don't believe in a cookie cutter approach. There's no cookie cutter approach, and unfortunately, you're seeing that on social media. It's really branching out and changing. So, I would beware of a kind of a cookie cutter approach. I would try to listen to the client. Number one, figure out what their objectives are, what their intended audience are, and how to craft a message, and then deliver it through social media in a kind of a strategic way. For instance, here's a free tip on social media. If you're looking to get a message out to the greatest audience possible, there are two times to post. Let's take Facebook for example. Studies after studies after studies have shown the two ideal time to post something on Facebook are between 6:45 a.m. and 8:30 a.m. and then again from 6:15 p.m. until about 8:45 p.m.
Now, I never thought about a thing
It's
like
it's
that,
like
but
drive.
it's
It's
when they
drive
get
time.
up in the morning and when they come back
People
from
get up
work.
in the morning, they're checking their Facebook, and you want to be at the top of their feed. When they get home in the evening, they're checking their Facebook. Most people in most jobs are not really accessing their Facebook during the day, and the demographic that's using Facebook during the day, 9 times out of 10 isn't really the demographic you're trying to reach. There's nothing wrong with posting something in the middle of the day. You're just going to get much better metrics, much better results
Right, I
if you
can
do
see
it
that where you don't
prime
have the
time.
buying power specifically for people that are working.
Right.
It's for people that are homemakers or retirees. Well, what type of a customer are you looking for then to serve them, to help them do better in what they're going to do? What specific trades?
We don't have a specific. We don't have. I don't have a specific customer. I work with large land developers,
Right,
power delivery, power generation, um, um, you know, utilities,
right.
financial institutions. I've worked with financial institutions. but I've also worked with the American Trial Lawyers Association. I do a lot of work at the federal level trying to get people to put pressure on Senator Collins or Senator King or one of the congressional representatives about a certain bill.
Right.
We'll do work with people that are trying to get things moved through the Maine legislature. I don't do direct lobbying, but what we do is what we call grass tops and grassroots lobbying.
Right.
So we're trying to, I would call you, say, hey, Bernard, could you call Senator so-and-so and tell him that, this is a really bad bill and he needs to vote against it? And you'd say, sure, Randy, send me some information. And I'd send you some information.
You're getting that message out.
Right,
Then.
and so, but the senator is getting all these calls from all these different people, but I'm the one driving all the different people to call the senator. So that's...
Well, it's funny, when I spoke to some of my friends in Congress, if they get 5 or more calls,
Oh, yeah,
then they pay attention to it right away.
absolutely.
So what you're doing is you're galvanizing people to reflect on what problems we have here in Maine.
Well, yeah, we do, and you got to be strategic about it because you got to think about who's your target. If your target is Senator Collins, you got to know who Senator Collins' kitchen cabinet is. You got to know the people that she listens to, the people that she trusts. Who are the people that are going to influence Senator Collins? Then you go after those people. If I just have Joe Smith call Senator Susan Collins' office, he's going to get a receptionist at the Portland office. That's probably not going to be the best way to penetrate in. But if I get somebody who knows Sam Collins up at SW Collins up in Caribou and, serves on a board with him or something, and he says something to Sam and asks him to get a message to Susan, much more effective. So we try to think about, how we do our communications, not just doing communications. We don't do just a direct mail kind of shotgun approach. We consider ourselves, there's two kinds of ways to do things, and we consider ourselves snipers. Very patient,
Well, that's
but
the way
very
to do
selective,
it.
but one bullet, one kill, instead of taking a shotgun approach and just seeing what you might hit.
Well, in business, we always say it's better to bullet what you're doing
Yeah,
and stay with it rather
focus.
than do a lot of different things. Even though you can make some money at it, you won't grow and make more money overall.
Right. And the other thing is, if I can add one thing real quickly.
Sure.
One of my mottos is I tell every client, there's two things that you can pay attention to in business. There is your pride and there's your greed. And these are not bad things. Even though we tend to associate these as negatives, they're not. Your pride is who you are, how you want to accomplish things, how you build your business, how you want to move forward. That's your pride. Your greed is your objective, what you want to get done. I want to build a new building. I want to put up a new suite of condominiums. I want to build a new cell phone tower. That's your greed. So when we first meet with a client, I always ask them, I say, which is more important to you, your pride or your greed? Because if your
Good
pride,
way.
if your pride, you can't serve both masters equally full force. If your pride, how you do things, if that's more important to you than getting it done, then you don't need to hire me. But if what you want to get done, if your objective is really much more important than your pride, I can help you.
That's the way to go. I'll tell you,
Yep.
that's telling people what the message you want to get out. And it's for responsible people to grab that message and run with it. Because unfortunately, we need people who can get them into communications better, into social media better. And there aren't right now too many people that have grown with this thing like you have. So you understand both sides of it. But what's the big mistakes we make in doing this?
Well, I think, you've seen some news stories about big mistakes. People don't. First thing we do is we tell people that social media tools are power tools. And just like when you're working with a power tool at home, you have to take a few precautions, take a deep breath before you fire up that skill saw. You should be wearing safety glasses, and make sure that your wood is properly viced down or what have you. Too many people get impulsive on social media and they write things or they tweet things or what have you without really thinking through what are the consequences. They're not taking a strategic approach. They're posting for the sake of posting, and these things tend to come back. The thing is, never never be angry on social media. First of all, never show your frustration on social media.
Sometimes it can be
It
frustrating.
can be frustrating, but that's when you need to, and these are lessons I try to learn for myself every single day, but that's when you need to push your chair away from the desk and go have, a cold drink or take a walk and just breathe, because it's, there's no value, there's no benefit to waging war on social media, because what it becomes is it becomes just like a street circus where everybody gathers around and watches these, and it's like two skunks fighting. There's no way to come out of it without stinking.
That's right. It's very true. I think you have to understand it to really make it pay for people.
Hmm.
And in strategic management, they teach you, you know what you have to do a year, 2, 3 years from now. How do you respond to that?
Well, what you do is you develop a plan. Again, that's a strategy. But
Right.
along with strategy come tactics. And your tactics, how you move on that strategy, those need to be fluid and need to be adjusting. You can think out long term, 1, 3, 5, even 10 years.
Well, that's blue skying 10 years, but
Well, of course,
3 to 5 would
3 to 5, of course.
doable.
But even in 3 to 5, we have to, you still need to be, we tell our clients you need to be nimble enough to avoid the thing that's right around the corner that nobody can see yet. And we try to give them the tools and the guidance, and we're available 24/7 to make sure that if any little thing pops up, you don't want to be just spending all your time on social media or anywhere else putting out fires. What you
Right.
want to be doing is, you never want to be the caboose. You always want to be the engine. You want to be driving the train.
Well, that's optimistic view, and that's the right way to do it.
Right.
It's funny, so many people don't plan out things that they have to do. They get into something, and that's why they're failures so much today. Small businesses have that problem. They jump into it. They may make a good profit, but nobody pays them their bills, and they're out of business in 1 year. It's crazy.
Right. And most every business that you would talk to, even a nonprofit, they believe truly in their heart of hearts that they're a good company. Whatever it is they want to do, it's a good thing, and people should just automatically be excited. People are not automatically excited.
Well put.
And so it's sometimes it's frustrating helping the client understand that they need to really explain their message, explain their goal, and explain what the benefits are, because they just get frustrated. Well, everybody should, this is a good thing. People should just automatically love it. And why is the planning board going to vote against this? Well, for this reason, this reason, this reason. So let's talk about those. Let's figure those out. Maybe let's shift those around a little bit.
Was it a lot of personal contacts that you've acquired over the years that help you in this, beside going out and meeting new people
Right.
as clients?
Yeah.
How do you reach out to the new people?
You know what, social media aside and technology aside, what I said earlier is so true. The business and everything else we do in life, it's about building relationships. And some of those basics, you don't need an iPhone or a tablet or a Bluetooth headset. You don't need any of that to build relationships. And a successful business is constantly in the business of building new relationships and maintaining existing relationships. You're married, and I'm married, and we both know that some days it's really wonderful to be married, and it's really great, and other days it's a real challenge, and it requires work, and you work at it to make it better, and you invest in it when it's down in the dumps. You put a lot of extra energy into it because you know that it's going to come back up. The benefit is there. And that's what we tell clients that they need to do, is constantly be making new friends and taking care of their existing friends. You don't want to be so busy making new friends that you forget about your existing base, your existing client base. You want to always take care of your clients, always, and look to building new clients. And that, Bernard, it does not require, like I said, a laptop. It just is common sense.
It requires a lot of experience, because experience matters. To be at the cutting edge today, things, as you say, are changing so dramatically
Right.
that when you can come in with ideas to help people, boy, they're ahead of the game right away.
We try.
And that's, well, how did they get in touch with you?
How do people get in touch with me? Well, I'm pretty darn available to find. You can find me at randyseaver.com. I
That's
offer,
easy to,
yeah.
how do
So
you spell that, Randy? See, I know it's
it's
in the film, but
it's RandyYSEAVER.com.
is there a period between Randy
No,
and
it's just
Seaver?
Randy Seaver, one word,
Right.
.com. And that's a little blog. I write about a whole bunch of different stuff, but I have a section there called Pro Tips if people are thinking about running for political office. Um, you can also, I mean, I'm in the phone book. I'm on Facebook. You can find me at Twitter, Randy_Seaver. On Facebook at Randy Seaver. You can find me at Barton and Gingold, Power Engineers, for professional, or I'm also on LinkedIn. I'm
Well,
on
you're
Tumblr.
right in there where the action is.
Yeah,
That's
so
for sure.
I don't think there's a social media outlet that I'm not good into. So
Well, this is the thing of the future. There's no two ways about it.
right.
And it's here now.
Hmm.
So for those of you who really want to get help in communications and finding out about the medias and what to do, your background, Randy, is superb.
Well, thank you.
And I think that this is what all of us need, a helping hand in business and in personal life to reach out. In fact, your wife even works for the Maine Health
Department
System.
of Health and Human Services. Yeah.
So you're in, your family's involved in a lot of things that are at the cutting edge right now,
Yep.
especially with new laws coming out
Mhm.
and things happening to people. But if you're in business, small or large, and you need that help, Randy, you can give that to them, which is good.
Thank you.
Well, I'm delighted to say hello to Randy Seaver. I remember him as an editor, and he had a peak hat, a baseball hat. You remember that?
Yes. Yes.
And he was everywhere in Biddeford and Saco and all the surrounding areas.
My favorite job.
And well, that's what you have to do. I think
Right.
if you enjoy working at something,
Yeah.
you never work.
Right.
It's just the time you put in is something where you can say, I've never worked, but you work 40 to 60 hours a week
Right.
and enjoy it. And that's what I think you're doing, Randy, too. I want to commend you again, and I want to thank you for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
Well, if you folks have any comments to make, please send them to me, bernard@featherman.com. We look forward to your comments one way or the other, and I hope they're all positive. And we'll be seeing you again next week with another fine, very fine type of speaker who will come here and tell you things that you want to learn. Thank you again, Randy, for
Thank you,
coming.
Bernard.
on.
Pleasure to be.